Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Heights, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch, and if you're looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 24 of A Series of Death. Bah, Marlot said on his pad. Do you know how many of the Protectors live in the city? He'd done a search, but all he'd found was the Protectors' recruitment site, which had a section explaining they didn't divulge who their members were. I know a few dozen, she answered, who served at the same time as me. Why are you asking? Just something I came across. He wanted to ask her what the Protectors did with soldiers who misbehaved too much. Were they simply released into society? Were they... He didn't know. The Protectors were secretive. There were no movies documenting how they worked, unlike with the Enforcers. Any movie using anything that could be interpreted as Protectors' procedures had to put a disclaimer that it wasn't based on actual procedures. Do you know if a retired soldier would leave a body to rot? They're people like the rest of us, she replied with a chuckle. What we go through makes us used to following orders, unless we stay long enough to start giving them. But it doesn't make us better people, or worse, she added. You think a retired soldier left a body you're investigating? More like 12, Marvel thought. It's a possibility. I can check with people I know. If it's one of them, I'm sure they'll tell me, and I can convince them to do their duty. Thanks. I appreciate it. Somehow he didn't think anyone she knew would be able to do that, to do what this hunter did. He considered himself a soldier, and if he had been in the Protectors, Marlowe suspected he hadn't left as part of being retired. He considered hacking the Protectors' side, but thought better of it. Rumors were they did more than fight other nations' army. They engaged in cyber attacks. He searched the medical personal database for the sheep who had treated him when he'd been gored in the woods. It had been the last time he and Trembor had fought as a couple. There were too many sheeps working as medics, and while she'd told him she'd been in the Protectors, it wouldn't be in her personnel file. Could he narrow the candidates down? Protector service was variable, but the shortest term someone could be part of... Bah. The shortest term was 12 years. That removed the youngest of the medics, which still left too many. Alahan knocked and entered. Sir, an express delivery arrived. She held the envelope for him. Thanks. He took it, noting the Revenue Bureau symbol in the upper left corner. He looked at it while she left. If there had been any doubt, if there had been any doubt left, the hunter was sending him the ID cards and not the Revenue Bureau. This removed it. The Revenue Bureau the RB didn't send anything express. He clawed one side open and tipped it over. The card fell out and landed face down. It was well used, scuffed and scratched. Mullet wondered if the owner had already noticed it was missing and ordered a replacement. He picked it up and turned it over. Maybe this time he'd warned them of the danger they were in. He could pull their numbers from the information on the card. It might help. He stared at the lion's face. He knew this face, this lion. How could he not? No, couldn't be. There was no way anyone could have stolen his ID without him realizing it. He called Trembor and got the cursed block message. He ran out of the office, grabbing his jacket and passing his car. At his car, he slammed into it when the door refused to open. With another curse, at the time this was costing him, he took his pad out again and unlocked it. He pulled out of the lot, almost hitting another car in his hurry. The other driver screamed at him until Merle bared his teeth at her, and the gazelle quickly looked away. It did serve as a reminder he couldn't help Trembor if he got in an accident. So he slowed down to something more reasonable. He scrolled through the numbers he had of Trembor's family, trying to think of anyone who'd take his call. take this call and let him speak. He was certain they'd all love to scream at him. Part of him was surprised none of them had shown up at his doorstep yet. That Serene hadn't shown up. If she had, and didn't simply gut him on the spot, he might find out what was going on with Trembor. He avoided an incoming car as he looked up the number for the wet watering hole. There was one family member Marlot knew who wasn't inclined to scream at him. The number he found rang and rang without switching over to a message center. He let it ring. Hopefully it didn't switch over. If it didn't switch over, it meant there was someone there, even this early in the afternoon. Watering hole, a male finally answered. We're closed. Elnard? Yeah, the lion replied cautiously. It's Marlot. I'm Trembor's friend. I remember you. He was more than a friend. He wanted to yell at the male, but as part of Trembor's extended family, the lion might only be nice to Marlot while he worked. Alienating him wouldn't help. I need you to call Trembor. I have to talk with him now. It's important. He noticed the speed and slowed down. He was lucky traffic was light. I can't call him, Elnard said after a silence. Look, I know you feel you have to take his side, but this is more. That's not it. The lion cut him off, sounding angrier than Marlot thought he had any rights. And I don't appreciate the tone. Tone? He hadn't. Trem doesn't take family calls while he's working. We're all on a timed block list. His immediate family has override codes for emergency. But I don't. Marlot cursed. Is there anyone outside his family who'd have it? People outside his family wouldn't be blocked, and you'd know who his friends are more than me. Trem and I are just cousins, not. Marlot terminated the call and cursed. He couldn't think of anyone. He was sure Trembor had introduced him to some of his friends. He remembered enforcers the lion had been close to, but he'd already decided not to involve them. So, even if he remembered who they were, he wouldn't call them. He just had to hope he'd get to Trembor before the hunter did. And again, get back here. The car skidded to a stop before the house, and Marlot was out, running up the path before the engine finished shutting down. He banged on the door. Trembor, open up! He entered the lock code the Trembor gave him, and the light remained red. Of course, the lion had changed it. Trembor wouldn't forget that detail. He banged on the door again, then listened for sound. Every body the hunter killed had been found in their homes. If Trembor wasn't there, he was safe, unless some had been killed elsewhere and moved to their home afterwards. Marlot hadn't been able to remove that as a possibility. Marlot hadn't been able to remove that as a possibility since he wouldn't hack into another RI system. Would he go after his lion where he worked? No, he couldn't go there. Trembor's office was inside a precinct. Only, the hunter had said he'd seen Marlot go into Bahamel's office. That meant he'd been in the precinct. Only officers were allowed beyond the lobby. Was the hunter an enforcer? Marlot hadn't considered that. Should he call them, if only to confirm Trembor was there? His pad buzzed, an unknown number. His finger was over the decline icon when he recalled the other unknown number that had called him. He accepted it. Hello, Marlot. The calm, not quite male or female voice greeted him. What have you done with him? He looked around, trying to find anyone who was watching him. A few were. A wolf screaming on his pad was noteworthy, but they didn't have the pad to their ear. And who might you be referring to? The male asked, amused. You fucking know who. You sent me his ID, Express even. Well, time is of the essence. I felt it was a good way to impress that on you. Is he alive? Marlot was terrified of the answer, and the fact the hunter took his time replying made the despair claw at him harder. He is. Marlot could breathe again, for the moment. Why him? Marlot demanded when he found his voice. Out of curiosity, does he know about our game? Marlot was at a loss again. What? How could I tell him, even if I wanted to? You know very well I haven't been able to talk with him. But our game began before the two of you broke up. You mean the cards? Of course he knows about them. You've been sending them to our office. If you wanted him not to know, you should have sent them to my house. Is that why you're targeting him? Is is that why you're targeting him now? Marlot asked, blood running cold. Because he knows a little of what you're doing? Even if I didn't realize what was going on then, you know that. He doesn't know anything. That's not why I'm doing That's not why I'm going to take him. The voice said, sounding annoyed. I'm insulted. You think I'm that petty. Then why? Going to take him. Future, he didn't have Trembor yet. That meant his lion might take down the hunter when he tried. Why? The hunter mused. Consider him an incentive. You've been distracted by him, and it's affected how you play our game. Maybe me removing him will help you focus. You stay the fuck away from him. Marlot, yeah, do you hear me? You even think of touching him, and I'm going to rip you apart. That's the spirit, the male said. So satisfied, Marlot's anger vanished. If I hadn't already sent you his card, I'd tell you he was safe. But unfortunately, this has already been set in motion, so I need to see it to its conclusion. He's not home, Marlot yelled. You can't do anything until he's home. You are right there. He isn't home. Marlot could breathe again. The hunter continued, but he's about to be inside a home. That's going to be enough this time. No, he yelled as the call terminated. No! He looked around. He couldn't do this. Not to him, not this bad buzz with a message. But you've been a good sport, so I'm going to give you a chance to change the outcome. This once. Another message followed with an address. He plotted it onto his pad while running to his car, only remembering to unlock it at the last moment. Then he sped off, almost sideswiping another car. And this concludes chapter 24 of A Series of Death. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the book as well as the others in the series, they are available at all major e-retailers. If you are looking for a different way to support me, that is on my Patreon, where you can also get access to just about everything I've written. And if you want to listen to these live, it's on Twitch every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. The links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.